All right, what do you think about this declining attendance in stadiums in college football? Happened again in 2021. Let's talk about why, some of the factors, and maybe what's ahead. Reading an article at CBS by Dennis Dodd, it said that 2021, you had another year of declining attendance in stadiums across the country, and it's now down to the lowest point since 1981. It's the 9th year out of the last 10 there's been a drop-off. It's the 7th year in a row. But the real kicker to me is it kind of put it in perspective. You go, man, it's the lowest on-campus attendance across the country since 1981. And we're at a time where stadiums are, a lot of them, a lot bigger than they were back in 1981. There are exceptions. People go, yeah, well, Arkansas's attendance was actually up. Second year of Sam Pittman, and they were awful prior to him getting there. Just awful. They had a lot of fans that are happy to buy a ticket just to see a touchdown after what they went through before Sam Pittman got there. You can't say, well, the solution is just to win. That's apparently not the case either, because last year you had almost half of the final top 25, almost half those teams saw a decline in attendance. 8 of the final top 10, they had a decline in attendance last year. So it's not just win and it cures it. So a lot of people said, well, COVID still had an effect in 2021. People didn't want to go or whatever. The problem is you can't really point to COVID when this has been a steady trend for 9 of the last 10 years. So first up, let's look at a few things and start with ticket prices. Ticket prices are up. Obviously not the only cost in attending a game: gas, travel, food for tailgating, before, after, whatever, staying off campus in a hotel, all those things factor in too. But if you look at ticket prices, I saw one study that a few years ago in the Big Ten, and I say this is only maybe 2 years ago, the median season ticket price across the league was about $500. Certainly there's some more expensive depending on where you sit and some less, but that's kind of right in the middle. So if you just use that, family of 4, mom, dad, 2 kids, you'll have to have tickets. You're talking about $2,000 baseline. Let me ask you a question. If you fork out the money for the tickets, wherever they are, and the cost to get there and all the other costs involved, what are you paying for? Well, let me say this. For a majority of fans, a huge majority of fans of the huge majority of schools in Division I football, you're paying for an experience. You're paying to go and experience tailgating before the game, and obviously the game and the atmosphere, but the food and the time with your family and seeing friends from college and hanging out after the game and maybe staying in town. You're paying for all the stuff around the game too. For the fans of about 110 out of 120 schools, you're not paying to go watch your team chase a championship. Now, for the fan bases of those 8 to 10 schools at the top, that kind of exclusive club, the college football playoff and its limited number of teams and participants and all that is not a deterrent for the fans of those schools, the top 8 or 10, because they legitimately have a shot at that every year, and it's pretty much the same teams every year, and that's part of the problem. Compared to every other sport, men's basketball tournament, baseball, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL, any of it, college football is the one that is by far the fewest number of participants in its actual postseason. It's also the only sport of any of the major sports that has a virtual Grand Canyon gap between the top 8 to 10 teams and programs and schools in the country versus everybody else. There is a Grand Canyon gap. It's created by a lot of things, primarily recruiting structure, the lack of enforcement of a recruiting structure over the years. But right now, as it stands, the leaders in college football have no way to balance that out. That leads to less investment and more apathy among the majority of fan bases across the country. So I'll put it this way. In the modern era, fans had better enjoy paying for the tailgating experience, hearing the music in the stadium, seeing the band, watching your team run out in those colors, win or lose, you had the experience. You stay in town, eat at the restaurant, see your college buddies, maybe spend the night, make a weekend out of it as a family. You had better enjoy all those things, the entertainment factors around the game, in order to go, because you're not paying and putting that money forth because you think your team has a legitimate shot to go win the title. And what are those prices again? Let's talk about the length of the games. You know, the average length of a game in the NFL is just over 3 hours. Average across the NFL, just over 3 hours. College football last year, the average game was somewhere between 30 minutes to an hour longer than the average NFL game. Now, there's some obvious differences in college. I mean, halftime is one of them. Halftime in college is 20 minutes. In the NFL, it's 12 because, you know, we have marching bands and they are a huge part of the game day experience in college. But think about television's role also. Bill Connolly wrote recently, and I read this, that modern games have up to 5 times the minutes devoted to advertising than they do to actual gameplay. That is far, far out of balance. And why? Am I going to tell you later about the fact that this decline in attendance is only going to get faster and steeper in the coming years? Well, there are lots of reasons. We talk about the length of games. Think about this. In 2021, faking injuries became a rampant problem across the country in college football. Well, what do faking injuries do when they become rampant? They disgust a lot of fans who've, you know, spent their hard-earned money to go and to be there. And simultaneously, it lengthens the game. It slows the game down. So it's a harm. So they're going to have rules and try to figure out how to enforce it, which is really hard to do. TV commercials, we talk about that. If you're in the stadium on the TV breaks and you're sitting there and you're in the stands twiddling your thumbs, wondering when they're going to blow the whistle and spot the ball. Officials reviewing plays. You're watching it on TV, they may cut away and come back and give you the result. You're in the stadium, there is no cutaway. We stand here and, you know, watch the video board while we figure out what the replay is. It's just the game has bowed down to television, to their money. And therefore, the games are not in any way, shape, form, or fashion geared towards the fan experience in the stadium. It's just the way it is. So on that point, 11 a.m. kickoffs. So if you agreed with me earlier that most fans, a huge majority of fan bases around the country, they need all the things that are connected to the game, entertainment-wise, before and after even, in order to be enticed to actually attend. But if that's the case, why do we have 11 a.m. kickoffs? I'm just going to tell you, living here in the South, 11 a.m. games in September, I can't think of a better way to just automatically slice off a portion of your fan base from even considering attending the game than to say, we're going to kick off at 11. And you know, you compound the decision-making for the fan too. Like I said, let's say a family lives 2 hours away. Well, they're not going to get up on game day early enough to drive to campus to have tailgating before the game so they could be in line to get in the stadium by 10 a.m. to then wait in line and go through a metal detector and then get up, go to concession and get to their seat in time for the national anthem. I mean, people are just not going to do that. So unless they get a hotel room the night before, what are those costs again? The entire sport and all the decision makers have gotten on their knees and bowed at the feet of television. And we know why. Television revenue. But that's the reason you have 11 a.m. games. That's the reason the games are too long. And those are major factors in people staying away from campus. And it's only going to pick up speed. I'll tell you why in a minute. What about the home viewing experience? It's cheaper staying at home watching games on television. It is more comfortable. When it's hot outside, you turn on the AC. When it's cold outside, you turn on the heat. You eat your own food, use your own bathroom. You get frustrated, you go outside and rake leaves. You want to check out another game, you turn on the other TV in the room. The home viewing experience may be the biggest factor that colleges and universities have to fight. And there's a lot of irony, tragic irony maybe, in that all their decision-making has been bowing down to television dollars over the years, therefore leading to more control of the product and the game times and everything by television, not what's best for the game. And that television experience being now a major factor, people are not coming to campus. Why? Because they'll stay home and watch it on television. And lastly, I'll leave you with this. I think what's going to happen in the next few years is the decline in attendance in stadiums is only going to pick up speed, and it's going to steepen right in front of our eyes. And for those of us that love college football, you have to be concerned with that. Some other factors are now added into the mix, and whether we like it or not, whether these things are good or bad, they will have this effect. The transfer portal. The emergence of the transfer portal only widens the disconnect between the school and the sport and sort of that emotional tie to a portion of the fan base. Those fans, they just don't really like the whole transfer portal thing, and so it's easy for them to just kind of let go of that emotional connection to the sport. Another is name, image, and likeness recruiting. Now, name, image, and likeness is supposed to be a marketing thing that isn't tied to recruiting at all. But you and I know in reality it is, and it will be, and it's only going to get bigger. The majority of fan bases around the country know what that means is we're on one side of the Grand Canyon, and a few of those guys are on the other side of the Grand Canyon, and we used to be able to see them with binoculars. But with name, image, and likeness recruiting, we're going to need a telescope to be able to see them from our side over here. It widens that emotional connection between your fan base and your product at most schools. It is concerning. What the results are, I don't know. It may simply be shaving off seats out of stadiums over the next 10 to 15 years all across the country. Capacities will go down. The seats that are there will cost more, and the makeup of your fan bases in the stadiums may really change also. I don't know if that's, the exact case, but it will be some variation of that. That's what I think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.